generally. So the main study techniques that I used are, first of all, I review the textbooks a lot. So usually at the start of the year, the teacher hands you a big textbook or a stack of textbooks. And then during spring break or winter break, I usually spend some time just reading through the entire thing. Sometimes, for example, for like the more intensive APs or the textbook intensive ones, such as APUSH, so US history or world history, I take notes. So I take about 1 page of notes per chapter just to familiarize myself with the textbook. And I take these notes by hand just from experience. Usually taking notes by hand helps me remember better. And this is pretty helpful to get a big picture view of how events are progressing throughout history. In addition, this might not apply to you, but sometimes if I want a more detailed view of a particular topic, I'll use flashcards. So I use flashcards in AP Biology. So I recorded several topics such as the ecology unit. I recorded about 500 flashcards for that. And I used Anki. You can see the logo here. It's an online software that can help you deal with really large sets of flashcards. And it will also tell you when to review these flashcards. And it will also keep track of which flashcards you're having trouble with, which is something that I don't think Quizlet does. And then something I did was to discuss with my friends and family. So this will help build your confidence and your familiarity with the topics. So they say that, if you understand it, that's one thing, but if you teach it, that really proves that you have it understood. So generally just explaining it to my mom or explaining it to my sister really helped me solidify my grasp on some topics. And in that vein, so drawing pictures and sharing with others also helps do this because both of these activities require a large level of familiarity. So for some of my notes, rather than just taking notes, like written notes, I will draw a diagram instead. So maybe I'll draw a diagram of a leaf to show photosynthesis, or draw a diagram of a cell to prove that I know what's inside of it. And then sometimes there's interesting stories or cool things that you can do. So for example, in biology, there's this guy at Columbia University who spent several years just researching fruit flies and how their X and Y chromosomes had sex-linked genes on them. And I thought that was a really cool story. In US history, for example, there's a story about some campaign slogans. There's a campaign slogan in the election of 1892, I think. It's called Mama, Where's My Pa? And these stories are really helpful and they just make you laugh while you're studying, which is really nice. So moving on to the next slide. So again, I know we went over this in the previous class, but you should make a schedule for the studying as well. So if you're using the textbook, you want to have a way to get through all of the chapters throughout the year and maybe to go backwards and forwards. This way, when you get to the end, you forget the beginning. And in addition, you should probably separate the week into different days, different exams, because you want to spend, for example, 2 days at the very beginning of the week studying history and then not touch it for the rest of the week. And something you could do is really coordinate with friends. So friends are a really important resource that you can use. And they will help you keep your schedule online and keep you from slacking. And of course, when you're studying, you should also have breaks. So you don't want to be studying for more than an hour or two at a time, because then your efficiency really goes down after that first hour. So for some specific APs, these are just generally, or not generally, but these are more specific tips. So I mentioned history a lot, so I'll just skim over that. So I took notes of the textbook. I used the American pageants. That's what our textbook, our school used. And then we had a campaign, so we had a bunch of campaign slogans that we joked over. I mentioned one earlier. Another one would be a car in every garage, a chicken in every house. So that would be like the Hoover slogan. And then I also used flashcards for every president in every election. So this way I would know specifically what's going on during the elections, who the presidential candidates were, and I can refer to them easily on the document-based essay question on the AP. Another example is AP Macroeconomics. So this one, the study technique I used was applying it to real life. So maybe this was last year. So if I was sitting in the car with my parents and we were passing by a shop, I would describe how some economics principle like supply or demand, or maybe an externality applied to this. And then this way I would get a more intuitive sense of the ideas that were inside of the AP test. In addition, our school doesn't really have a good macroeconomics textbook, so I downloaded one from online. It's by ManQ, and this had several anecdotes in it. So it had several stories about advertisement. It had several stories about trade with foreign countries, and I thought these stories are really interesting and cool.
Summarize the focused thinking is what you're typically more perhaps used to as knowing as the focused study time when you're working on a problem or reviewing material, going through flashcards. That is typically your focused thinking. But in order to solidify the information that you're gaining, you want to also access your diffuse thinking. And why the reason that helps is because it helps you to connect it to things outside of that very focused mode.